The Substance Review. Demi Moore's new horror thriller. Must watch or total flop? First up, this will be filled with spoilers. Well, not filled with them, but there will be spoilers. Second up, if you're the kind of movie goer who does not like to look at mucus and blood, spit, I wouldn't call it gore because it's not so much gore. It's more like watching somebody pop a pimple. Like that's the type of gross that this is. If you don't like that or you can't handle that, then don't watch the movie. Otherwise, it's definitely watchable. And I'm not sure I would call it horror unless we want to have a new subgenre called like yuck horror. It stars Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, who's the daughter of Andy McDowell. Margaret Qualley has enormous teeth. It's written and directed by some French chick who also directed and wrote a previous movie called Revenge, and I think that's pretty impressive. She's the only writer, so it's pretty cool. That's the way it should be if we want to consider film to be art. The setup of the story is that Demi Moore is an aging, famous actress, and she's feeling it that she's not as hot as she used to be. For a 61-year-old, Demi Moore looks amazing. She has an amazing body, and she has a lot of balls because she appears naked, fully naked in several. And the nudity is refreshing because American movies are just so obsessed with never showing women naked anymore. And it's no wonder that it was directed and written by a French film director, and I guess technically it's a French film. Demi Moore's character is called Elizabeth Sparkle, or Sparkles. Sparkle, which is a very good name for a character who feels like, who was once famous and is now not sparkling so much. The setup of the story then is that she finds a substance that promises to give her beauty back. This substance is called the Substance. So the title is already very appropriate, but the title is doubly appropriate since the theme of the film is style or substance. Isn't it the substance that counts? Or is it just outer beauty? So the title and the setup for this film have the makings of an incredible movie. Dennis Quaid is a supporting character, and he does an amazing job of being silly and incredibly annoying and very repulsive. Like you're seeing on the screen, you just saw right there. He's eating food with his hands. His hands are all dirty, and then he walks around. He walks out and he shakes someone's hand right after he was eating, and he's got slop all over his fingers. And he's like a shallow producer type who only cares about, he's very chauvinistic, and he reduces everybody to like, are you just a young hot piece of ass or not? Because otherwise, screw you. But he's so stupid and silly that you don't exactly hate him. And I don't know much about acting, but it's always been my belief that if the actor does a good job, then you'll like them even if they're a bad person in the movie. Hannibal Lecter, you like him even though he's doing terrible things, even though he's a terrible person. I don't know much about directing, but it's filmed very wonderfully. Like all the shots are carefully coordinated and shot in the right, like really, the director took a lot of time with the lighting, and this director in terms of directing can hold her own against anyone, I think. Now, yes, I don't know much about acting or directing, but I know a lot. I'm an expert about storytelling, so that's why I'm qualified to review this. And I also know art criticism probably better than most art critics, film critics at least. So at 12 minutes into this 2.5-hour movie, Demi Moore's character gets into this huge car crash. The kind of car crash where you'd probably get killed. And if not, you'd be grossly disfigured. But she gets like not a scratch on her. So it made me wonder, why have such a huge car crash unless you were just trying to get the audience, like it was a cheap attempt to get everybody, to get everybody engaged. See, she gets into a car crash, and then because of that, she goes to the hospital, and then she gets informed about the substance. And there's so many easier ways for her to find out about the substance than to get into a huge car crash that destroys her car. She could be just going for a checkup, for example. So I would say take out the dramatic car crash scene because it did nothing. Anyway, so she signs up for the substance to start taking it, and so she has to travel to a like abandoned building to pick it up, and she has to like hunch down into this like the door to get into this building is a little crawl space, and it reminds me of very, very, very much like being John Malkovich. There's very much a being John Malkovich tone to this whole movie. Another thing, especially in the first half of the movie, there's very little talking, which is very impressive. It's because it's just one character going through something, whereas, you know, lesser movies, they often have like a friend or somebody who doesn't know what's going on so that the other character can deliver exposition. And a good example, recent example would be The Penguin, the first episode of The Penguin, where the Penguin mentors this kid. And so the Penguin explains everything to the kid, and the kid is basically the vessel for the audience who needs to have everything explained to them. And for all the gore, or I wouldn't call it gore, but grossness that's to come, there's a lot of hot females, like pictures of their asses and their boobs and all that stuff. So it's very beautiful in that way. And another question I had was that Demi Moore begins as an aerobics, she does like TV workout aerobics, which was a bit confusing to me because she's got a star on the Walk of Fame as an actress that apparently I think won an Oscar. However, why is she doing aerobics videos? So then I don't know why that was necessary. So either have her be an actress, a washed up actress, or have her be an aerobics, what do they call them? Richard Simmons. Because the beauty of this movie is it goes for simplicity. So why complicate it by have her be a actress / aerobics instructor? So our Fountain of Youth story begins with her. She inserts the substance. She injects it into her vein, into her arm, and then her back splits open, and another body comes out, and it's a younger, hotter version of herself. I don't know if I don't think it's supposed to be her, but it's just like a young, hot chick comes out. So in the iPod-like box, very pretty little box that the substance came in, along with the substance was some instructions. And one of the instructions is that they've got to swap every 7 days, which we're later to figure out exactly what that means. And both of you are the same person. Like, remember that she is you, you are her, you are one. So you are one. You're not two people. You're the same person. Now we think that that's going to be important. So we find out that the way that this works is that for 7 days, the Demi Moore version of herself goes comatose, basically, and the younger version gets to live, her life, and she has to suck out this ooze from Demi Moore's spine and inject herself with it every day for 7 days. And then after 7 days, she has to go comatose, and then Demi Moore wakes up and has to live her life for 7 days. And then you have to strictly follow this rule, no matter what. But the young version of herself, the hot version, decides eventually, doesn't decide, she screws up, and let's say she goes over 7 days. She goes 7 days and 10 hours. And so then when she switches back to Demi Moore's body, her finger is all decrepit and aged. So the movie progresses where the younger version keeps taking over too much time, and the older Demi Moore version keeps starts rotting away, getting old, uglier in every way. And this is where the idea stops being genius and just becomes the movie doesn't know what it's about anymore. At an hour and a half through, I was thinking, what is this about? And it's a 2.5 hour movie. And again, I kept thinking back to you are one. She is you. You are her. Well, that doesn't seem like that because they're both acting differently, and I don't even know if they're have this if they share the same memories when they're. I don't think they are. They don't know what the one doesn't know what the other's doing during the week that you know what I mean. The mind. It's not one mind. It's two minds. Because at first I thought, okay, so when Demi Moore does the switch after 7 days, her consciousness moves to the other body, and vice versa. You know, and when the younger one has to do it, then the mind is it's there. The mind goes back and forth between the two bodies. But no, apparently that's not what's happening. They each have different minds, and neither knows what the other is doing. So in a very real way, they are not one at all. And that would be okay. It would be okay to stretch exposition over an hour and a half for us to understand how this process works, this substance. But it's not okay if it doesn't have a unifying theme the whole movie, right? So the younger version keeps going further. Like now, instead of 7 days, I'm going to go 2 weeks without switching back. I don't want to switch back, even though she knows that the Demi Moore version is aging and withering away. So she's just an idiot. That's all it's. So that's what this movie is about. That the younger chick is an idiot, and this happens too much. It's too much of a cop out in movies where they're like, they say that the message is, for example, to prove that you shouldn't be cruel to animals, right? But then the movie, it doesn't prove that. All it proves is that the main character is an idiot. It's not that they're cruel to animals, it's that they're an idiot. I would say the first hour of this movie was perfect and had potential. And I mean potential for perfection. And I was thinking that, maybe another theme of this movie is about hating your younger self and hating your older self, because they both end up hating each other. Demi Moore is jealous that the younger version is getting all the attention and is, enjoying themselves so much. And the younger one is disgusted with how old and ugly Demi Moore is getting. But I mean, you can't have too many themes without the themes getting in each other's ways. And if they're the same person, then so what was the point then? Demi Moore is just sacrificing herself so that some other person can be hot and famous. It's not her in any way anymore. So if the first hour reminded me of John Malkovich, the rest of the movie started to remind me of David Lynch and David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg can make good movies, and by good I mean like average in terms of art. And David Lynch is just an idiot. I think he takes ambiguity to a new level. His movies have no point. They just go anywhere they want. They're basically just dreams. It starts getting overly gross, but to no effect. Like there's no point of it. I mean, I think it's a really clever thing to show the juxtaposition between beauty and ugliness, youth and decrepit, like real ugly old age. But I don't care. I don't need to see somebody picking their nose. I don't need to see somebody taking a dump. None of that happens in this movie, but it might as well have, because we just see some really gross stuff. It's not because I'm afraid of blood and guts. It's just because it's just ugly to look at. The movie also reminded me of Darren Aronofsky, because Darren Aronofsky would very often have a very great idea for a movie, like Black Swan would be a great idea. It was a great idea. The Fountain, which nobody has seen, starring Hugh Jackman, was a great idea. But Darren Aronofsky often can't complete the idea. He can't figure out how to end it. He can't tie it all together, so it ends up just being ambiguity. And again, ambiguity is a very powerful, wonderful thing when it's used properly, but it's not a get out of jail free card. If the director of this movie and writer of this movie, if she had waited, let her mind figure out the ending of this movie, waited a couple years, just work on the ending, make the perfect ending that is suitable, that the movie needs, then this would have been a masterpiece. But instead, she just said, "I'm just gonna make it. I got the setup, and let's just, it won't be perfect." And it's a shame. It's just a shame. So then, at the end of the movie, the young Demi Moore clone kills the older Demi Moore for no reason, because she's an idiot. That's the real shame of it, is that it's because she's an idiot. There's not a deep reason for this. She just gets mad and kills the older Demi Moore. And now, because she's an idiot, she can't survive. She can't live much longer because she needs the precious Demi Moore spinal juice to stay alive. And there's no more Demi Moore. So what does she do? She gets the substance and she injects herself with it. And then a clone comes out of her spine. But this clone turns out to be a David Cronenberg freak of nature looking thing. Now when the clone injected herself with the substance to make a clone so that it would be a clone of a clone that came out, I thought, wow, that's really clever. And it was. But it's just too bad that everything that led up to it and was just out of her idiocy, right? Idiocy should not be a plot device, right? If somebody told you that you can only live as long as George is alive, and then so you end up just like making George's life hell, and then finally killing George, then you're an idiot. Anyway, so this Cronenbergian clone of a clone freak that has like an arm sticking out of its back and has a face in its shoulder and it's all deformed and it's a freak. It looks in the mirror and it sees how disgusting it looks. But it still shows up for the big appearance that the clone was supposed to go to, where they were going to go on stage and for New Year's, right? It was the big day. That's what this was all about for the clone. So the clone of the clone, who knows it's hideous, shows up for the thing, expecting everybody to think that it's beautiful. So the clone of the clone is also an idiot, or just crazy at this point. But also at this point, I've seen enough weirdness and contradictions that I don't really care anymore. I'm not expecting a masterpiece anymore, and I'm just enjoying the grossness of it, and I'm just viewing it on a much lower level, just as like a fun sort of gross out horror movie. So my expectations of this being a masterpiece as I'm watching the third act they're gone now. So I'm just kind of just enjoying it for what it is. And to its credit, for a movie that's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, it doesn't feel like it. It's not that hard to watch because there's so much beauty in it. And by beauty, I mean just like a lot of ass shots. I like seeing female asses. Like if they're nice, nice female asses. And they're doing aerobics. The asses are doing aerobics through a lot of the movie. And I don't mind at all. Yeah, so the freak monster Cronenberg clone of a clone goes up on stage and everybody in the audience is screaming and saying, "Monster! Kill the monster!" And it just degrades into just like a Frankenstein thing. Kill Frankenstein, kill the monster. So people start pushing the freak around, and then eventually the freak, like I guess one of the arms falls off, and it starts like spraying blood all over the audience, and the monster freak is twirling around, so the blood is just going all over everybody. And I guess I should have mentioned that this movie had an element of humor the entire time, so it's not totally out of character of the movie, but this movie doesn't really know what it is in terms of tone, I guess, to some degree. But anyways, that scene was really hilarious. She's just spraying blood, like more blood than any person could have, all over like thousands of people. And then in the last scene, the freak monster is walking down the street. And by the way, the freak monster was being pushed around by everybody. But now the monster just falls on the ground and just crumbles into like a million pieces. So then Demi Moore's face is the only thing that's alive. It's just like her face on the ground, not even her head, just her face. And it's crawling around, and it crawls up to her star on the Walk of Fame, and then it just sort of dies. Which is a very clever final image. Well, it's not the final image. The final image is the street cleaning machine drives by and cleans up the blood that stains her star on the Walk of Fame. So after finishing the movie, here are a couple thoughts I had. Okay, so Demi Moore's character is introduced at the beginning of the movie as a sympathetic character who's, going through a tough time. She's not hot anymore and she feels it, and people are showing her less respect every day. She doesn't seem like a mean person at all. She seems like a very nice person. The problem with this is that nothing good happens to her after that. Like, it's just like a horror. Her life becomes a horror, and her death is horrible. So why start her off as a sympathetic character when you could have started her off as, you know, like a greedy, shallow biznatch, and then we could enjoy watching her life get disgustingly horrible, right? Like, we've seen what happens to her when she becomes young and hot, and how ugly of a person she is. Both of her is. So why would you set her up? Why would you set us up as an audience in the first half hour of the movie to think that she's just a really nice, lonely, sad person? On another note, there were a lot of dream sequences. By that I mean you're watching a scene and then something terrible happens, and then you find out that she wakes up and you're like, oh, okay, so that wasn't really happening. That was just a dream. And that's just really, really cheap, and it wasn't necessary. It didn't help the movie whatsoever. We've all seen these cop-outs in movies where you watch for 5 minutes, you watch all this crazy stuff happening, and then the person wakes up and you're, okay, so that was just a waste of my time. The last 5 minutes that I watched didn't happen. But back to having her being introduced as a sympathetic character in the first half hour of the movie, they should not have done that. They should have had her be introduced as a person with no substance, and the movie should have been titled No Substance. And those two things would have improved the movie drastically. And again, on the subject of titles, having a one-word title is not that creative. There's probably 5 movies called The Substance. When you use 2 words, that's just 2 words can make it creative. Even a word as small as no. No Substance is more intriguing of a title. Like the name of my YouTube page, Human Warnings. Just putting those 2 words together is highly creative compared to just calling my YouTube channel Human or Warnings. If you support gays, click like. If you respect blacks, comment. If you think women are people too, click the notification bell. And if you care about sick children, subscribe.